Here are the letters that we inherited from the Romans. And here are the countries that speak Romance languages, the descendants of Latin. Today, this is half the world. For the ancient Romans, the entire civilized world fit within the borders of their state. The Roman world, the Pax Romana, became first example of globalization. How did this happen? Let's take a stroll through 12 centuries of Roman history with our very own Virgil. Yes, by the way, we also got these numbers from the Romans. Who is Rome? The city on 7 hills, the capital of Italy? But that's now. And 2,000 years ago there was Rome, and another 1,000, just like that. A tiny settlement of the Latins by the Tiber River. How did he manage to conquer the whole world? First of all, he was lucky with his neighbors. From the north, the Etruscans, a mysterious people whose language has not been fully deciphered. From the south, the Greeks. Here is their colony. This part of Italy was then called Greater Greece. They all actively traded with each other. Rome emerged at the crossroads of trade routes. From the very beginning, Rome was an open city, a refuge for outcasts, murderers, runaway slaves, all sorts of riffraff. Rome offered migrants unique opportunities to become full citizens. This will allow Rome to become the largest metropolis of antiquity. The Romans themselves believed they were descendants of refugees from the Middle East, escaping the aftermath of the Trojan War. Romulus and Remus were the great-great-grandsons, the Trojan hero Aeneas. Nursed by an Italian she-wolf, the brothers quarreled over the future capital of the world. Romulus killed Remus, gave the city his name, and became its first king. According to legend, there were 7 kings in total, each ruling for an incredibly long time and giving the people something pleasant. The calendar, the sewer system, the temple of Jupiter, Optimus Maximus. In fact, much of what later made the Romans famous, like aqueducts, bridges, and possibly even gladiatorial games, they borrowed from the Etruscans. Even the Latin alphabet is an Etruscan invention. They adapted the Greek letters to suit themselves. It's no surprise that the last legendary kings were Etruscans. It was from them that Rome, having preserved the patriarchal simplicity of the Etruscans, borrowed its military and state organization. In 509, the city was shaken by a sex scandal. The son of King Tarquin the Proud violated about the virtuous girl Lucretia. Tarquin was expelled. He became the last king of Rome. The Romans decided not to allow the concentration of power in one person's hands anymore. Starting from 509, instead of a monarch, they began to elect 2 consuls. Strictly. For 1 year, the consuls were controlled by the Senate. It consisted of 300 fathers, in Latin patres, hence patricians. These were representatives of the oldest local families. Those who weren't lucky enough to be born into the right families made up the plebeian class. Even if they were as rich as the patricians, they still didn't have the right to hold public office. In the struggle for these rights, which lasted for 200 years, the Republic will take shape. Literally. Common cause. The plebeians made up the backbone of the army, and to get what they wanted, they threatened the fragile state with emigration. To the neighboring hill, every time the frightened patricians made concessions. For example, they introduced a special position of commissioners for the rights of the plebeians, the popular tribunes, with the right of veto. They could overturn any decision made by the consuls. One of the main outcomes, the struggle, was the establishment of the first written laws. Before that, the law was oral, and the patricians interpreted it as they wished. By 287 BC, the plebeians achieved full equality in rights with the patricians. The unity of Rome was expressed in the formula Senatus, Populusque Romanus, the Senate and the Roman people, which is still adorned in Rome today. Even the manhole covers. In 390, the history of Rome could have come to an end. The city was unexpectedly captured by the Gauls, the guard dogs did not sense the danger, and for that they would be crucified every year, and the last defenders of the fortress on the capital were awakened by the geese, which saved Rome from complete destruction. The shocked Romans carried out a military reform. The Roman legion was divided into maniples, which made it more mobile. In battle, for the next 100 years, the Roman army was engaged in constant wars and united all of Italy. Romans made allied treaties, recruits firm, They make allied treaties with them, and loyal allies will become an inexhaustible source of recruits for Rome. It is precisely because of this that the Roman legions will stand firm in the fight against the most effective army of that time, the Macedonian phalanx, which had recently conquered all of Asia under the leadership of Pyrrhus, a relative of Alexander the Great. Recently conquered all of Asia by the Macedonian phalanx under the leadership of Pyrrhus, a relative of Alexander the Great. The Greek city of Tarentum hired the most expensive and star-studded military leader of his time to defend against the Romans. The last stronghold of resistance to Roman expansion in Italy. After conquering Tarentum and reaching Sicily, Rome would face the interests of a much more dangerous rival, the master of the Mediterranean, Carthage. The Romans referred to the Phoenicians from Carthage as Punic. This is where the Punic Wars began, stretching over next 100 years or so. By 149 BC, Rome had captured most of the territory of the Punics and their allies. But after each defeat, the trading Carthage quickly recovered. Senator Cato the Elder would end every speech with the same refrain: Carthage must be destroyed. And they did just that. The city was wiped off the face of the earth. The entire population was enslaved, and the earth was sprinkled with salt, condemning it to an eternal curse. In the same year, 146, the Romans razed another city, Corinth, to the ground. Greece and Macedonia became Roman provinces. Rome will appropriate the colossal wealth of the crumbling empire of Alexander the Great, but the patriarchal simplicity of Rome will fall before the refined Greek culture. Greek will effectively become the second language of the state. The Roman nobility will urgently sit down to learn new words. Hexameter, history, rhetoric. The most famous orator of Rome, Cicero, will take the speeches of the Greek Demosthenes as his model. However, full rights over this vast territory are still held only by the Romans themselves. Even the residents of the rest of Italy, who make up the majority in the army, do not have citizenship rights. They will demand equality, declare war, and achieve the right to participate in the governance of the state. This will change everything. If ancient Greece remained just a collection of warring city-states, then Rome gradually extended citizenship rights to the conquered, and this laid the foundation for the empire. Having conquered half the world, Rome became a victim of globalization, and this will lay the foundation for the empire. Having conquered half the world, Rome became a victim of globalization. Cheap grain and the influx of free slave labor from new territories ruined small peasants. The majority of the population of the Republic, they flooded into the city and filled the class. The proletarians, those who have nothing to lose except their own offspring. At the same time, the rich became hundreds of times richer. They bought up all the lands of the ruined farmers for cheap. Previously, the United Senate and the Roman people were divided into two warring camps. The people's tribunes, the Gracchi brothers, will try to reconcile them. They will propose to take the excess public land from the rich and give it to the ruined farmers. And also to start free distributions, bread, for the poor. Dissatisfied senators will decide to suppress the Gracchi movement by force. They will kill both the brothers and several thousand supporters. Rome will plunge into civil wars. A social lift for the proletarians will be devised by the popular general Gaius Marius. He will start recruiting them into the army, promising land at the end of their service. Thus, the legions will be loyal to their generals personally, rather than to the Senate and the Roman people. In 49 BC, two outstanding generals clashed for power in Rome. Gnaeus Pompey added the eastern provinces to Rome. So, for example, the restless Judea became part of it. He also cleared the Mediterranean Sea of pirates. He crushed the slave uprising led by Spartacus, and not without reason, he added the title, the Great, to his name. Gaius Julius Caesar conquered Gaul. Today, this would be called genocide. He slaughtered 1 million Gauls and enslaved just as many. Then he defeated the Helvetii and the Germans and invaded Britain. According to the law, before returning to Rome, the general had to disband the legions and receive something in return. A moment of glory, a triumphant entry into the capital, to submit and to the citizens. Caesar will make an unprecedented move. He will refuse to obey the Senate and, crossing the border of Italy, he will cross the Rubicon River and direct his legions towards Rome. In just a few years, he will defeat both Pompey and his other rivals. For this, Roman legions will fight against Roman legions. On the way, he will annex new territories to Rome and place Queen Cleopatra on the Egyptian throne. At the same time, he started an office romance with her. After a romantic cruise on the Nile, she will give birth to Caesar, that is, little Caesar. Upon his return, Caesar adds the title Imperator to his name, meaning victorious commander. and he gathers all political positions in his hands, including consul, people's tribune, dictator. Rumors started to spread that Caesar wanted to proclaim himself king. A conspiracy is brewing among the senators. Caesar, they are being slaughtered. To everyone's complete surprise, Caesar declared his great-nephew, Gaius Octavian, to be the main heir to his fortune. He will immediately get involved in the struggle for power. In 31 BC, he will defeat the last competitor, the general Mark Antony, with whom Cleopatra has already started a new romance. The lovers will commit suicide. The only master of the vast territory will be Octavian. Caesar was in power for 4 years. Octavian, who took the title Augustus, meaning sacred or great, remained at the head of the state. Endless 43. He did not formally abolish the republic. He simply concentrated all possible positions in his hands, which gave him almost absolute power. But he referred to himself, I emphasize modestly, he called himself the Princeps, the first senator. And even though skirmishes with the barbarians continue on the borders, peace is settling in Rome. A period of peace and stability lasting 200 years. In the empire, there is economic growth. The bread distribution reaches 200,000 people. By Augustus's order, an open 500-meter pool was dug in the center of the capital, where 3,000 gladiators staged battles on real ships. In Rome, there is a construction riot. The areas of concrete high-rises are growing. Augustus has to introduce height regulations and limit the height of skyscrapers to 6 stories. The citizens are still unhappy. They complain about traffic jams, pollution, the Tiber's water, and high rent. The golden age of poetry is coming. Augustus's minister of culture, Maecenas, allocates grants to glorify state values. In honor of Augustus, temples will be built, and even a month will be named after him. This is how the cult of Roman emperors is formed. They will be honored alongside Mars, Jupiter. After Augustus, power is for the first time being passed down through inheritance. The Senate opposition left us vivid portraits of the first emperors. The suspicious Tiberius unleashed terror under the guise of the law against insulting majesty. And you could be judged for just about anything. It was enough to not praise the authorities sufficiently, or to pay in a brothel with coins bearing the emperor's image. And in distant Judea, a preacher was crucified for refusing to honor the emperor as a god. Caligula wanted to make his horse a consul. The scholar and food enthusiast Claudius was too engrossed in the pike and the alphabet reform to keep an eye on the intrigues at court. As a result, one of his wives, Messalina, competed in brothels with the ladies of the night, while the other, Agrippina, poisoned Claudius with his favorite mushrooms to elevate her son from another marriage, Nero, to the throne. She poisoned Claudius with his favorite mushrooms to elevate her son from another marriage to the throne. Nero, believing himself to be a born actor rather than an emperor, Nero will kill his own mother, then the apostles Peter and Paul. Then, it is said that he will set fire to Rome, so that during the blaze he can recite poems about its destruction. Nero will blame the Great Fire on the first Christians, who were then seen as a dangerous Jewish sect, and will initiate the first mass persecution. And finally he will take his own life. Most of the details about this era come from the historian and senator Titus, who observed the degradation of republican institutions. Indeed, the popular assemblies were abolished, and the fate of the empire was now decided not so much by the Senate, but by the Praetorian Guard, the personal bodyguard of the emperor, established by Augustus. They suffocated him with a pillow. Tiberius stabbed Caligula with a sword and appointed Claudius emperor. To be fair, at the same time, the empire expanded with new territories. The Roman legions conquered part of Britain and founded the city of Londinium there. The provinces received a transparent tax collection system, and the Roman nobility began to enter the Senate in large numbers. The founder of the next dynasty will be the grandson of Christian from Italy, Vespasian Claudius. The Flavians were more liked by historians. Of course, Vespasian and Titus, while suppressing the revolt in Judea, left only the western wall of the Jerusalem temple and carried out yet another genocide. Of course, by modern, not Roman standards. But Vespasian had a good Roman temperament and imposed taxes on the urine collectors in public toilets. And the destroyer of Jerusalem, Titus, will even receive the title the Merciful. After a grand triumph for the people, he will open the Colosseum. Titus will be called the Love and Comfort of the human race. And after the holidays and large-scale construction have drained the treasury, Vesuvius will destroy Pompeii and the plague will ravage half of Italy, Titus will be deified. Made by The 2nd century will go down in history as the era of the good emperors. Contemporaries considered Trajan the best emperor in all of history. Under him, Rome is a city of 1 million people, and the empire reaches its maximum size. Rome connects the new territories with a network of paved roads. This system still defines the transportation map of Europe. After Trajan's conquests, Hadrian shifts to defense and builds strong fortifications in Britain. Norene, Danube. In Rome, the Pantheon is being built, the world's first temple covered by a large dome. A true architectural sensation of its time. It will be dedicated to all the gods at once. Among them, Hadrian will include his beloved, the youth Antinous. More images of him have survived to this day than of any other Roman. The last good emperor, the philosopher on the throne, Marcus Aurelius, will spend most of his reign on military campaigns. In the breaks between battles, he will write the manifesto of Stoic philosophy, Meditations. Under Marcus Aurelius' son, Commodus, Pax Romana, or Roman peace, came to an end. He preferred the glory of a gladiator to state affairs. As a result of a conspiracy, the emperor was strangled by his wrestling partner, the slave Narcissus. Rome plunged into chaos. The next 100 years are a series of random emperors proclaimed by the army. One after another, the throne is taken by a freedman, an adventurer who bought the throne at auction, a general of African descent who will fill the entire empire with statues of the former enemy Hannibal, a Syrian sun priest, and a former shepherd, whose popularity is owed to his strong physique. In 212, Emperor Caracalla was half African and half Syrian. He granted Roman citizenship to almost all free inhabitants of the empire. The idea that one could be a Roman in Judea, in Africa, and indeed in any corner of the empire is perhaps the main legacy of Rome that we still benefit from today. By the middle of the century, Rome is in such a crisis that entire provinces begin to break away from it. The Gauls, for example, they proclaim their own empire. Order will be restored by the son of a freedman, Diocletian. Starting his career as a soldier, he will end it as an absolute monarch. An amazing example of social mobility, Diocletian divided the empire into 4 parts, with 4 co-rulers in 4 capitals closer to the borders. Rome has lost its significance. The Senate has turned into a city council. The country was now ruled by an army of officials, personally subordinate to the emperors. Thus came the end of the ancient world, which revolved around the concept of a free community and citizen. The emperor transformed from the principle of the first senator into the dominus, which means lord. This is how slaves addressed their master. The citizen became a subject, the warrior became a soldier, and the peasant became a serf. Diocletian himself, after 20 years, renounced his imperial power, and he left for his estate to grow cabbage. After Diocletian's departure, the co-rulers will fight for power. The winner will be Constantine, the future saint, and equal to the apostles, Constantine the Great. Before the decisive battle for Rome, he supposedly saw a cross, and the inscription, "In this sign, you will conquer." After this, Constantine equalizes the rights of all religions. After 300 years of persecution, Christians emerge from the catacombs and gain the right to build churches alongside the temples of Augustus and Mark. Constantine will transfer that very cross from Jerusalem to the new capital of the Roman Empire, Constantinople. Theodosius, I will make Christianity the official religion and will begin to destroy ancient temples. He will be the last emperor of the still united Roman Empire. His sons will divide it into the western and eastern parts. The eastern part will live for another 1,000 years. We know it like Byzantium. The west, on the other hand, will become a victim of the great migration of peoples. Founded by migrants, Rome will fall under the pressure of a new wave of refugees. Ironically, the last ruler of Rome will be named Romulus. In the center of modern Rome, just off to the side of the Colosseum and the Roman Forum, there stands a mausoleum. His master was neither an emperor nor a senator, and a simple baker named Eurysac. He was born a slave in a family of Greek migrants. Rome had already conquered Greece by then. Then he gained his freedom. He made a contract with the capital for bread supplies. And he became so wealthy that he was able to build a monument for himself and his wife. This is such a monument. And before Rome, in some ancient Egypt and afterwards, in the Middle Ages, you died as the person you were born as. The life and career of Marcus Vergilius Maro. This is the answer to the question, how did Rome manage to create a world power that lasted for over 1,000 years? Did you like the video? We have a similar one, but about ancient Greece. And there's an entire course of lectures on Byzantium. Or, the shortest history of Russian art in the 20th century. We packed 100 years into 20 minutes. That's not all. Subscribe to the Azamas channel and you definitely won't miss anything. Thank you.